Tonight, confirmation that President-elect Trump's national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, was in contact with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. the very same day the Obama administration announced retaliation for Russia's unprecedented cyber attack of the 2016 election. In late December, the Trump transition team says that Flynn and Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak exchanged a series of text messages and a phone call. On Christmas Day, December 25th, Flynn texted the Russian ambassador, quote, "I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I look forward to touching base with you and working with you, and I wish you all the best." The ambassador texted him back, wishing him a Merry Christmas in return. Then, on December 28th, the Russian ambassador texted Flynn again and said, "I'd like to give you a call. May I?" That phone call happened on December 29th, the same day the White House announced sanctions on Russia and ordered some 35 Russian diplomats to leave the country immediately. Trump's transition team says the men did not discuss sanctions on Russia. Instead, their conversation was focused on arranging a call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and President-elect Trump after the inauguration. Today, the White House says its reaction depends.
You can imagine why these kinds of interactions may take place, why the incoming national security advisor may have the need to contact the representative of a foreign government that's based here in Washington, D.C. Depends on what they discussed. It depends on what he said in terms of whether or not we would have significant objections about those conversations.
Flynn's ties to Russia have been scrutinized since the moment Trump tapped him to be his closest advisor on national security. Flynn was seated right next to President Putin at a Russian media gala in December of 2015 and previously had a paid speaking gig with Russia Today, the Kremlin's TV network, though before he took on a formal campaign role. Today, Trump again denied claims that Russia has compromising information on him and continued to accuse the intelligence chiefs of leaking the allegations. He tweeted it was probably released by intelligence, in quotes, even knowing there is no proof and never will be. A transition official tells CNN that there is not frequent contact between Flynn and the Russian ambassador to the U.S., and this key detail as well. They say that on that December 29th phone call, they did not, according to the transition, discuss those new sanctions that on the very same day the Obama administration was imposing on Russia.
According to a report by AFP, thousands of people fled heavy fighting on Myanmar's northern border to China Wednesday. About 4,000 Myanmar residents have fled across the border to China after mortar shells fell in two internally displaced persons camps in Kachin State's Waing Ma Township. The growing crisis comes as senior UN officials Yang Hee Lee was blocked from visiting the conflict area this week, part of her trip to probe the escalating violence. Now, clashes between the army and ethnic minority militias in the region have intensified in recent months.
Before you retired, were a nurse in that detention center.
Yes.
Where he's being held.
Uh-huh.
So had you not retired, you could be tending to this man.
And I would.
You would?
He would get the best care I could give him.
How would you find the grace in your heart to do that?
You can't fight evil with evil. Love overcomes everything.
What's your message to folks who are struggling with this? The rhetoric is so full of hate right now.
If Congress didn't do anything when they killed those children at Sandy Hook, they're not going to do anything now. What does anyone need with a gun that shoot 10 to 18 rounds at one time? We need gun control. Too many mass killings back to back. We can do better. This is America.
According to our sources inside Al-Mazda Air Base, there has been at least 4 casualties, but we don't know if they were deceased, if they are deceased or actually only wounded. And for the time being, we're continuing to monitor the situation. But according to many of the residents who live around Mazda Air Base, they reported that they have heard loud explosions and they have managed to see the fire resulting from that explosions for 45 minutes after the airstrike happened, which indicate that ammunition or weapons storages have been destroyed and caught fire because of the airstrike. But sources close to the Syrian government have denied any reports that there has been an assassination of any high-level personalities, whether from the Syrian army or from the Lebanese Hezbollah party fighting in Syria, in the Israeli airstrike. The Syrian army command issued a statement before dawn local timing, almost 2 hours after the airstrike, denouncing the airstrike, vowing to continue fighting terrorism, accusing Israel of launching the airstrike in support of militant groups in Syria after they, quote, suffered heavy blows by the Syrian army.
FBI Director James Comey is facing renewed scrutiny on both sides of the aisle. Today, House Democrats left a confidential briefing with Comey on Russia hacking, fuming.
It's classified and we can't tell you anything. All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility.
Also today, the Republican-leaning Wall Street Journal editorial board says, quote, the best service Mr. Comey could render his country now is to resign, calling him too political for a position that's supposed to be apolitical. This while the Department of Justice Inspector General investigates Comey's actions before the election. His decision to hold an unprecedented press conference last July closing the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, and then breaking with DOJ policy by sending a letter just before the election alerting Congress he was renewing a probe into her private server. Democrats mad about his decision not to sign on to an October letter from the intelligence community saying Russia was behind the election hacks, and refusal to speak publicly about ongoing investigations into people formerly connected to the Trump campaign and Russia.
You didn't say one way or another whether even there's an investigation underway.
Correct. I don't. Especially in a public forum, we never confirm or deny a pending investigation.
The irony
I'm not saying
the irony of your making that statement here, I cannot avoid, but I'll move on.
Other Democrats who recently had a briefing with Comey, a registered Republican appointed by President Obama, are coming to his defense.
Jim Comey is an honorable person who I think made a bad decision.
Tonight, Comey is at the center of another political firestorm for briefing the president-elect on unsubstantiated allegations against him last week. CNN has learned Comey had a one-on-one conversation with Trump after the intel meeting to brief him on the allegations. At a November interview with 60 Minutes, Trump left Comey's future hanging in the balance.
FBI Director James Comey, are you going to ask for his resignation?
I think that I would rather not comment on that yet. I haven't made up my mind.
So as of now, Comey is only 3.5 years into the 10-year FBI director tenure, and people familiar with the matter say he has no regrets about the decisions he has made surrounding the recent investigations and has no plans to step down as of now. He also released a statement saying he's grateful for the Inspector General investigation and hopes the results will be shared with the public.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has just concluded a 2-day visit to the country. He is the first foreign leader to visit the Philippines since President Rodrigo Duterte took office in June 2016. Representatives from 24 Japanese companies accompanied him on the visit. Abe and his wife visited Duterte's hometown Davao on Friday. The Philippines is the first stop of a foreign nation tour for Abe. He also plans to visit Australia, Indonesia, and Vietnam.
These are not scenes from a Hollywood horror movie. This is an abandoned railway barracks in downtown Belgrade. When the extreme weather hit, refugees and migrants here broke inside for shelter, using anything they could lay their hands on to start a fire. Just outside, a van makes its way through the blizzard alongside hundreds of queuing men. It carries the one treat these people will get today.
This queue right next to me is going to have roughly around 1,000 migrants and refugees who are waiting for their only hot meal a day, which is provided by the NGO. Currently, temperature here in Belgrade is -7, but just days ago, temperature plummeted even to -20.
But one hot meal a day and few free blankets won't solve their problems.
I'm not feeling well right now. I'm affected by several diseases like stuffy nose and chest problems, something like that. But here it's very cold and we are just making fire, but still we can't keep warm ourselves. We need to have facility, but we don't like to stay here. We are trying to leave this country and go to European countries, but we are stuck because of the borders.
Their final destination is the European Union, but they face many obstacles on their journey, and a warm welcome is something they rarely receive.
Bulgarian mafia attacked us. They beat us with sticks and stones. They were shouting, "Why are you here? This is not your country. Go home. Go back to where you came from." I begged them not to beat me since I was with my family, with my daughters.
Hassan is an award-winning film director from Afghanistan who has been stuck in Belgrade with his family for 4 months. Unlike thousands of others in the barracks at the train station who refused to move to refugee centers, Hassan and his family are living in one, hoping that they will be lucky enough to get into Hungary. They have heated shelter here, 3 meals a day, and round-the-clock medical attention. But Hassan doesn't want to stay here but continue moving north to Western Europe, which doesn't seem to be very welcoming either.
Bulgaria, with the EU funds, is about to finish construction of the wired fence at the border with Turkey to stop migration. But you know, no wall has ever prevented big migrations throughout history, if they are destined to happen. Anyway, I think that the solution to this problem should only be sought at its source, and that's the war-torn countries.
In the upcoming spring months, migrant numbers on the Balkans route are expected to rise again, but so too is the animosity towards them among indigenous populations. Meanwhile, Europe and the world are still failing to find the answer to their problems. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Belgrade.
Aaron, it does strain credibility that General Mike Flynn needed to place a call to Russia's ambassador to the United Nations more than 3 weeks before President-elect Trump's inauguration. After January 20th, once Trump becomes president, General Flynn's free to have any contacts he chooses with foreign governments and their ambassadors. But it seems very suspicious that 3 weeks in advance, he needed to have a call in order to schedule a call that wouldn't happen for weeks hence. I'll also say that the development of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Republican chairman and Democratic ranking agreeing to begin an investigation into contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia's government following the briefing that all senators received Thursday afternoon is a significant development.
I mean, extremely significant. And I want to ask you about what the repercussions could be here, because when we take just this phone call between Michael Flynn and the ambassador, between General Flynn and the ambassador, if it turns out that Russian policy was discussed on that call, the Washington Post, which first broke this story, says that would violate the Logan Act, which bars U.S. citizens from correspondence, I'm quoting on exactly what it does, intending to influence a foreign government about disputes with the United States, right? Only the president and the administration is supposed to be making Russian policy. So if this was talking about that, it would violate that. Would you enforce that act if you determined that they had talked about policy on that call?
Well, Aaron, this is just the latest in a whole series of developments that raise real questions about the gentleman that President-elect Trump has nominated to be Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who's received a Medal of Friendship from Vladimir Putin. As you just heard, General Mike Kelly, who was on the payroll of RT, which is the Moscow propaganda tool. I do think this raises real questions. The Logan Act, Aaron, has been rarely invoked in our history, but it lays down a clear line that we only have one president at a time, and that American leaders, American citizens, shouldn't be engaging in their own foreign policy. And this would be a very serious matter. We would be compelled to investigate further.
"5 o'clock every morning, they get up to make breakfast for their colleagues who can't cook." Yes, that's right, mules. Introducing the guardians of the Hefei Fuzhou line, 10 men and 5 animals. They are the ones who keep the train safe. They were charged with eliminating any potential geological risks in the deep mountains of Wuyi. Rains make the roads slippery, modern transport is impossible, and that's why the team relies on mule power.
They are friends and colleagues. We tied little bells around their necks so they wouldn't be bored walking on the road, just for some extra fun at work.
Mules are known for being hardworking, but this is a challenge for even the toughest animal. Each animal has to carry 200 kilograms of sand and cement uphill, and the man repairs the sections damaged by water. On an average day, the team will maintain 2 to 3 locations. Sometimes the mules could get hurt. Other times, they lose control. It's not a glamorous job, but someone has to do it. First, I feel really proud. When I take the train myself, I feel really safe because every hill and bridge we went through, we've made sure it's clear to go. Spring Festival is coming soon, so the next time when you take the high-speed rail, take a look outside the window. Maybe you can get a glimpse of the unsung heroes of the mountains, both the two-legged and the four-legged. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN.
The hunt for ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi may be intensifying. Defense Secretary Ash Carter offering uncharacteristic detail.
He moves around. I'm just confident. I don't want to say any more than that.
Carter says the U.S. doesn't know exactly where Baghdadi is, but he is making clear there's fresh intelligence. Military and intelligence officials will not say if the new information comes from overhead surveillance by drones or aircraft, intercepting communications, or detainees who have been willing to talk.
We anticipate that Baghdadi and other senior ISIL leaders have been moving around.
Iraqi Shia militias now insist he is hiding west of Mosul, not far from the Syrian border. U.S. Special Operations Forces, who've been looking for Baghdadi from the air and on the ground, have gotten clues from raids against top ISIS operatives.
As we continue to recover sensitive intelligence in locations in Iraq and Syria, we're going to continue to use that intelligence and use what we learn about their movements.
The top U.S. commander noting Baghdadi is increasingly isolated by the killing of those around him, making him vulnerable.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi probably wishes he had more direct command and control over his formation than he does right now.
And according to the defense secretary, it's only a matter of time.
His days are numbered, and that's true of all the rest of the leadership.
Vamos ahora hasta la Casa Blanca. Allí se encuentra Cecilia Muñoz. Ella dirige el Consejo Asesor de Política Interna de la Casa Blanca. Es una de las asesoras de mayor rango en ese lugar con el presidente Obama para dar un poco de perspectiva sobre la decisión y lo que cambia a partir de este momento. Cecilia, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Bueno, la pregunta que muchos se hacen es ¿por qué este cambio tan significativo a 9 días de salir el presidente Obama?
Sí, bueno, comenzando ahora mismo, el presidente y el secretario de Seguridad está cambiando la política que se llama pies mojados, pies secos, que es decir que los cubanos antes que llegaron a los Estados Unidos tenían la oportunidad de quedarse permanentemente. Esto está cambiando y vamos a tratar a los migrantes cubanos de la misma manera en que tratamos a cualquier persona de cualquier otro país. Es decir, que los cubanos que lleguen a los Estados Unidos sin permiso pueden esperar ser devueltos a Cuba y de su parte el gobierno cubano ha anunciado que van a aceptar los deportados de los Estados Unidos.
Ahí es, miles de cubanos han salido de la isla intentando acogerse a este beneficio. Algunos y cientos de ellos, y si no cientos miles, están en Centroamérica, están intentando llegar a la frontera. ¿Qué va a pasar con esas personas? Ya la política a partir del anuncio no existe y cualquier cubano que intente ingresar a Estados Unidos ilegalmente será tratado como cualquier otro inmigrante.
Bueno, sabemos que hay muchos cubanos que están tratando de llegar a los Estados Unidos y ese número se ha aumentado en los últimos años, pero ellos, los que están ya queriendo llegar, pueden esperar ser deportados si no tienen un base para pedir asilo político. Esto está cambiando. La política que teníamos es una política de hace 20 años y no conforme con la realidad actual. Los migrantes cubanos pueden esperar ser tratados de la misma manera que migrantes de cualquier otro país.
¿Qué viene a partir de ahora? Cuba dice que el aviso es positivo, pero quieren la derogación de la ley de ajuste cubano. Eso ya es del Congreso. Ustedes se van. ¿Consideran que con esta medida termina este acercamiento con Cuba de lo que corresponde a este gobierno? ¿Podemos esperar algún otro anuncio antes del 20 de enero?
Hay una ley, el Cuban Adjustment Act, y estamos a favor de que el Congreso revisa o revoca esa ley, pero mientras tanto, esta política es algo que se puede hacer en el Ejecutivo y el presidente ha decidido hacer esto porque ya ha llegado el momento de tratar a los cubanos como migrantes de cualquier otro país.
Para terminar, Cecilia, ¿qué le dices a quienes consideran aún que vale la pena arriesgarse para hacer ese viaje desde Cuba o a través de terceros países para llegar a Estados Unidos? El incentivo ya es mucho menor para tratar de hacerlo porque tendrán que demostrar que tienen un caso creíble de asilo político.
Exactamente. Y esto es cierto para cualquier persona que quiere llegar a los Estados Unidos sin papeles. Antes, los cubanos tenían la capacidad de quedarse si llegaron a nuestra tierra y es hora de cambiar esa política. Y esto está cambiando ahora mismo. Desde ahora, los cubanos que llegan no pueden esperar este tratamiento que es diferente comparado con el tratamiento de personas de cualquier otro país. Es decir, que vamos a aplicar la ley a cualquier migrante. Si tienen caso de asilo político, vamos a escuchar su caso, pero si no lo tienen, pueden esperar ser devueltos a Cuba.
As fighting intensifies, many Myanmaris living along the border are forced to flee their homes. Where I am, many of these refugees have already been forced into a village called Heshao, just across the river from China. The Chinese government is setting up shelters, but so far have not opened them up to the refugees. If fighting continues to worsen, they'll have to cross into China. According to what I've seen, many of these refugees are children, the elderly, the sick, and the disabled. They have no daily necessities. The shelters they're currently living in are built from tree leaves. Although they're from a different country, they're of the same ethnicity as us in the border area in China. We want to help. They're really struggling. They have no place to go. But what we can do is little, and we hope people from all walks of life can lend a helping hand.
Accusing China of destroying trust with its neighbors. That's the stance of President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary James Mattis.
China is shredding trust along its periphery.
Mattis told senators at his Thursday confirmation hearing that China's buildup in the South China Sea has raised tensions. In a 56-page written response to major global issues, he has also shown his determination to enhance alliances as well as to take what he calls a careful look at U.S. military capabilities in the region. And one of the U.S. longtime faithful allies, Japan, is expanding maritime security cooperation in the region. Also on Thursday, the Philippine president welcomed Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for a two-day visit.
As Philippine friends and longtime partners, the Philippines and Japan are committed to further expand and deepen our relations across the broad range of areas. We had an active discussion on enhancing our maritime and security cooperation.
The Chinese foreign minister waiting on the security pact between Tokyo and Washington. A spokesman called on the U.S. to keep its word and stop taking sides.
The Japan-U.S. security pact mentioned by some people from the two countries is a product of the Cold War and should not compromise China's territorial sovereignty and legitimate rights and interests. We hope that the U.S. can uphold a fair and objective stance, abide by its own promises, and stop giving out words to take sides on such a territorial issue.
The spokesman also reaffirmed that China has the indisputable right to conduct any legal actions within its sovereignty. 蒋绍玉 CGTN.
Thailand's parliament has voted overwhelmingly to make amendments to the constitution as suggested by the new king's office. It paves the way for a general election, probably at the end of the year, and return the country to democratic rule following a coup in May 2014. The draft constitution was approved in a referendum last year and has been awaiting endorsement by King Maha Vajiralongkorn, who took the throne in December.
Y alrededor de la inauguración presidencial habrá muchas fiestas. Una de ellas es esta, que tiene un nombre muy particular, una frase hecha célebre por un discurso de Hillary Clinton que estaba siendo grabado y que fue luego publicado por los medios. Vamos a hablar con el organizador de esta fiesta, cuyo nombre no he dicho, una palabra. Evelio Medina me acompaña aquí en Washington, ya está para la fiesta que organizó. Él es el presidente y fundador de la Cámara de Comercio de Downtown y de Brickell en Miami, pero además es el organizador de la fiesta, Evelio, de los deplorables. Una palabra de más uso común, más común su uso en español que en inglés, pero que ofendió a mucha gente y que ahora tiene hasta sello propio, el baile de los deplorables.
Obviamente, ante todo, gracias a ti y a todos los televidentes. Es muy interesante que nosotros, personas que hemos trabajado tanto en los Estados Unidos, que lo sentimos americanos, especialmente nosotros los cubanos, esas palabras que usa el régimen, suponerle, a nosotros, mis padres le decían gusanos, también a nuestros coterráneos de Miami lo dicen la mafia cubana, la mafia de Cuba en el exilio. Así que, pero lo que está pasando aquí es que Hillary Clinton, como bien dijiste, tomó esa frase que de verdad cayó de mal gusto, pero fue una parte importante en esa campaña. Estratégicamente levantó una ola de personas que de verdad le cayó mal, pero al momento la usó como una oportunidad de decir lo que se sentían como americanos y como personas que contribuyen a lo que es los Estados Unidos. Así que hemos usado esta oportunidad para hacer lo que es la gala de los deplorables aquí en el Ronald Reagan el 19 de enero, el día antes de la toma de posesión. Así que estamos muy contentos y de verdad que ha sido un enorme éxito porque las personas se sienten como con orgullo de ser deplorables.
Ahora, hay que poner esto en contexto, Evelio. Cuando ella da este discurso dice, la mitad de los seguidores de Donald Trump podrían ser incluidos en una canasta de deplorables. Esa fue la declaración que muchos se tomaron a pecho. Y me contabas que para organizar la fiesta no fue fácil porque en un principio no conseguían un salón que les alquilaran porque todos estaban ya reservados por simpatizantes de la candidata demócrata.
Total y absoluto. Yo fui hace 5 meses, visité a Washington, visité a 5 diferentes lugares y de verdad que no había oportunidad porque todos estaban acaparados, porque acuérdate que todo el mundo decía que Donald Trump no ganaba. Al ganar, fue sumamente interesante, esa noche no se durmió, pero el día 9 a las 9 de la mañana me llama el salón donde yo era el número 5 o 6 en espera y me dijeron que las otras personas ya habían cancelado y en ese momento empezamos a trabajar. Personas del comité que están apoyándonos y de verdad que vamos a tener una fiesta, si Dios quiere, porque es una fiesta, es una celebración. Ya la campaña se acabó, lo que estamos ahora haciendo es celebrando ser americano, compartir esta gran nación y de verdad es una invitación a todo el mundo de que vamos a unirnos y vamos a trabajar por el post y el bienestar de esta gran nación. Él, como bien sabe, está hablando de lo que es América primero o America First. Y es lo que vamos a celebrar. De verdad que conoce los eventos que hago yo, tienen que ser alegres, tienen que ser música, tienen que ser entretenimiento, pero vamos a celebrar, si Dios quiere, la democracia y la libertad que este país, que es tan grande, nos va a dar. Así que esperamos que él, lo que dijo de invertir en la infraestructura, invertir en los trabajos y de verdad crear una América que todo el mundo puede beneficiarse.
They've staked a claim to thousands of acres of what were sandbars and reefs. They've used sophisticated equipment like these ships pumping sand through those thin tubes to create islands. Then they built airfields with towering radar stations, constructed ports, deployed weapons there, even built barracks. China's military buildup of these islands in the South China Sea has angered the Obama administration. The U.S. has sent ships and planes very near the islands, sometimes drawing Chinese warnings. Tonight, a government-run Chinese newspaper is warning of a possible war with the U.S. over the man-made islands. It's spurred by this comment from Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson at his confirmation hearing.
We're going to have to send China a clear signal that first, the island building stops, and second, their access to those islands is also not going to be allowed.
The Chinese newspaper says, quote, unless Washington plans to wage a large-scale war in the South China Sea, then trying to block China's access to the islands would be, quote, foolish. And Tillerson had better bone up on nuclear power strategies if he wants to force a big nuclear power to withdraw from its own territories. Pentagon officials tonight are calling on China to reduce tensions. How could the U.S. deny China access to those islands? if the U.S. wanted to deny access, how would they do it?
Well, presumably you would want to start with a naval blockade. That's what people would think, Cuban Missile Crisis in the modern era. But this is a lot of space to cover. I would assume that you're talking about blocking access to the 7 islands that China occupies here in the Spratlys, out of these dozens. You'd also have to deal with their air capabilities. This is not just a naval blockade. China has 4 different airstrips built on the largest of the islands out there. They have hangar space for a full regiment of fighter aircraft at each one of these. That's an awful lot of capability. And finally, this is not without cost. These are not defenseless features. What you're looking at here are advanced air defense and anti-missile systems. This is an anti-aircraft gun.
Tonight, analysts are worried about escalation.
The biggest fear is of accidental conflict, The South China Sea, even under the best possible set of circumstances, is going to get more crowded and more contentious. There are going to be more commercial ships in the area, and there are going to be more military assets.
So this is the room?
Yes, it is.
This is sacred space?
It is.
Where would they have been seated?
In this particular area, right here. Everyone's seated around, so it was about 12 of them plus.
5 people survived. The wife and daughter of church pastor Clementa Pinckney were 2 of them.
Mrs. Pinckney and the youngest daughter was in the office, hidden under the desk.
They heard it all?
They heard it. And then the intruder left.
And it was locked?
It was locked.
The Honorable Reverend Clementa Pinckney, a state senator, church pastor, husband, father, was killed.
If you did a movie of a distinguished pastor, you would have cast Clementa Pinckney. I mean, he had a voice that was like from God.
Because we believe all lives in South Carolina matter.
A strong, powerful voice. But he carried it so gently.
Then Charleston Mayor Joseph Riley knew many who lost their lives that night.
This awful man took the finest people. Every time I come in this church, oh boy, just hits you. I wept at the 9th funeral. I guess I knew it was over.
These were close friends of mine.
What was the most difficult moment of any of those funerals for you?
All of them were difficult.
I can walk through there and it don't really bother me. I know that's what she want me to do. Not stay away from the church. Come on back in there.
The Bible study room is where Esther Lance goes to remember her mother.
I'm still trying to deal with it. And it's so hard for me that I know I talked to her that day.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of these folks?
Yes, and I knew them all. You go from Cynthia Hurd to Susie Jackson, Ethel Lance. Every time the doors of the church were open, Sister Lance was here. It's going to take even more time to go through all of this. But like I said, some days are better than others.
With us to share their reporting and their insights this Friday, Julie Pace of the Associated Press, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, Abby Phillip of the Washington Post, and Margaret Talev of Bloomberg Politics. At a time of considerable uncertainty, this much we do know. The spy novel atmosphere that dominated the closing months of the 2016 presidential campaign will carry over at least into the early months of 2017 and the new Trump administration. A few quick examples just today. The Washington Post, David Ignatius, reports the president-elect's controversial choice for national security advisor made several calls to the Russian ambassador to the United States just as the Obama administration was imposing new sanctions against the Kremlin for its election interference. Now, to the foreign policy professionals, that's taboo, a violation of the one president at a time rule. Add in Flynn's perceived pro-Russia history, and those contexts stir suspicion among Trump's critics. But Team Trump says that's laughable, that the calls were just to express condolences after a couple of tragedies in Russia and to lay the groundwork for a Trump-Putin phone call. They say the sanctions were not discussed. Trump himself stirring the spy saga anew in his morning Twitter performance. This a day after his spokesman said the president-elect wanted to move on and focus on major policy decisions. And, this is important, one of the many fascinating wrinkles in the big Trump cabinet confirmation hearings yesterday was listening to the nominees for defense secretary and director of Central Intelligence sound alarms about Russia and its cyber meddling, in stark contrast to the tone of their new boss.
But this was an aggressive action taken by the senior leadership inside of Russia.
I have a very, very high degree of confidence in our intelligence community. I would consider the principal threats to start with Russia.
And so at the close of this big week in Washington, transitions often give us clarity. Confirmation hearings give us clarity about how a president takes the hundreds of things he says in a campaign and narrows them down to the 4 or 5 things he will focus on out of the box. Who's in charge of Russia policy, and what is it?
I think that's a great question. You hear these officials going up to Capitol Hill and being very clear about their skepticism of Russia, their confidence in the U.S. intelligence agencies. At the press conference with President-elect Trump earlier this week, we basically had to yank out of him just an acknowledgement that he believes that Russia was behind the hacking. And then he later also said, but it could have been other people. I think that this question about how he will approach Russia, not just in terms of whether he will keep sanctions in place on cyber, but how he will deal with them on Ukraine, how he will deal with them in Syria is going to continue to dominate, as well as the question of why he seems to be so favorable toward Putin.
And to your point, Donald Trump tweets this morning. We heard from, you just heard there from General Mattis and from Mike Pompeo, the congressman who will be the CIA chief. Very tough words, very clear-eyed, they said, about who Vladimir Putin is and about what Russia's intentions are in the world, how it wants to undermine the West and the United States. Donald Trump tweets this morning, all of my cabinet nominees are looking good and doing a great job. He says, I want them to be themselves and express their own thoughts, not mine, right? So, all's fine. Then he also tweets this morning, though, things that undermine what they just said to Congress. He goes on about this whole fake news made up by sleazebag political operatives, both Democrats and Republicans, fake news. Russia says nothing exists, as if we're supposed to believe Russia is a credible source of what is right or wrong or true or false in the world. Then he goes on, probably released by intelligence, and intelligence is in quotation marks again, something Donald Trump has done repeatedly in his tweets. Released by intelligence, even knowing there is no proof and never will be. So there goes Donald Trump again, attacking or undermining, questioning, give me the right word, the intelligence community. A day after his top national security teams, people say, these guys are great, I trust them.
Which is why Mike Pompeo, the Kansas congressman, has a very tough job. He's the nominee to lead the CIA. And yesterday, really throughout the course of the hearing, he was a man who looked to me like he was trying to explain the president-elect and put distance with himself. Of course, he has to be the one who's confirmed here. So what I think we've heard from these cabinet nominees are, A, something that Republicans want to hear on Capitol Hill. There's much more skepticism of Moscow and Russia and Putin's involvement in this on Capitol Hill than there is in Trump Tower. And Mike Pompeo was clearly making the case that there is respect for the intelligence agency. But boy, he is someone, if he's confirmed, which it looks like he will be, inheriting a job that is very difficult, morale incredibly low, and tweets like this certainly don't help the matter at all.
And I think this idea that you can have cabinet secretaries who are on a completely different track from the person that they work for is not right. I mean, it's not a long-term and sustainable situation for any administration. And I think that going into this, we have to continue to assume that the president is the top of the totem pole here. His word is the overarching theme for the direction of all the agencies underneath him. And regardless of what is being said at these hearings, which are largely designed to reassure members on the Hill, both moderate Republicans and Democrats, the direction of the administration is going to be coming from Donald Trump, and even to the extent that his cabinet secretaries may disagree on him on individual issues, I don't think you can take that as a sign that things are suddenly going to be different from the words that are coming out of Donald Trump's mouth.
A transition is one thing, Margaret, but an administration is something else. What happens if this continues after a week from now? This hour, a week from now, Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. What happens if a week, a day, a month into the administration, General Mattis, then Secretary Mattis at the Pentagon, is telling his German counterparts and his British counterparts, this is our policy toward Russia, and then Donald Trump says something completely different. Or if Mike Pompeo is in meetings with his Russian counterpart or his Chinese counterpart or an allied country saying, here's our perspective on this, and the President of the United States says something completely different.
Well, obviously that's problematic, but the task for Republicans at hand right now is to decide whether or not they want to gum up any of these confirmations for President-elect Trump or whether they want to accept these people. And for them, put Marco Rubio aside just for a brief moment, but for everybody else, what they have is some important clarity, which is to say that Rex Tillerson, Pompeo, and Mattis are all willing to take their own firm stands, where their own reputation, where the rubber meets the road, about how they feel about aggression at the border, and inside of Ukraine, about the Iran nuclear deal, about any return to anything akin to waterboarding. They have all drawn their lines in the sand. If someone has to be confirmed in any event, to be the Secretary of State, to be the Defense Secretary, to be the CIA chief, these performances this week, by and large, are giving Republicans and even some Democrats a pretty good degree of confidence. The question is Mike Flynn, I think, in that role as the National Security Advisor, and how strong his word and his chain of command to Donald Trump will be vis-a-vis some of these
candidates. And he, as National Security Advisor, does not need to be confirmed by the Senate. So we're not going through this process with him of really trying to explore what his relationship with Russia is, what he's been doing in the time since he left the Obama administration and joined the Trump transition team. So the idea that you have someone who's going to be so influential, steps away from the Oval Office, who isn't going through this vetting, I think is as concerning to some Republicans as the confidence that they're getting from Mattis, Tillerson, Pompeo.
And when you talk to mainstream Republicans on Capitol Hill, again, they weren't Trump supporters to begin with. We need to be honest about that. They're still skeptical about the new president-elect in many ways. We need to be honest about that. But when you talk to them about General Mattis, about Mike Pompeo, Democrats and Republicans are saying this is great. Even if we disagree with them on some things, he's bringing in grown-up, experienced people into the government. This is a good, deep, experienced team. When you bring up General Flynn, people say things like he's crazy, he's nuts, he's a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust him.
So that is the question here. He has the proximity to the president. He will have a West Wing office. These cabinet secretaries will not. So the question here, again, is one we don't yet know the answer to. We'll start finding one out in a week and more. Who does Donald Trump listen to? Does he actually listen to the advice from his cabinet secretaries? And I think we have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will. We have seen, as he is a decision maker, he listens to a lot of advice, but he picked these strong men for a reason. So I think you have to think that he is open to changing his view, but proximity to power in this town is very, very important. And Mike Flynn may be the person who has the president's ear the last. So that's a interesting
and to his credit, to the president-elect's credit, if he wants to bring in a bunch of people who have some diversity in their opinions, but he wants to have great debates and policy debates with smart, experienced people, his call in the end. It's his call at the end. You mentioned, does he listen to everybody and make his own decision? Does he listen to the last person he talked to? As we've seen throughout the transition, the Republican establishment and leadership is trying to nudge Trump. A lot of people think he doesn't want to get into this Russia conversation because he thinks people are trying to undermine his victory. People are somehow trying to say he didn't win fair and square. The Russians put their thumb on the scale, delegitimizing him. Most Republicans are trying to say, put that behind you, sir. A week from today, you'll be inaugurated right here. Listen to the House Speaker Paul Ryan in a CNN town hall last night, making clear when you bring up Russia, he's very skeptical of Mr. Putin.
Donald Trump won it fair and square, clearly and convincingly. But the fact that a foreign government tried to meddle in another government's elections is wrong. And so I do think sanctions are called for. I think we have to step up our game with respect to confronting Russia.